Hey, good evening, everybody. Welcome back to our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz to a realistic map of meaning. And he's been teaching us some beautiful details on the laws of charity. And one thing I'm picking up for sure is that if you're a giver, know your limits, right? Because the takers don't. And they just keep on taking. So you need to know your limits. So it's just wisdom for sure. So let's just tune in and see how Rabbi Schwartz is doing tonight. Shalom, Rabbi Schwartz. So good to be with you again. We're going to turn the class over to you and let you take it from here.
Thank you, Dan. Hello, everybody. Robbie and Randy. Okay, so Ronald, rather, Randy. Uh, I'm going to go over to the where we were, and I guess I got to. This would be ZD. Okay, takes us here. We're almost finished. We just finished paragraph 15, which um, talks about um, giving to the synagogue um, or to the poor. And he gives it's a bequest, he leaves. So we're down into the Shulchan Aruch, and I'm going to take off my marker here. And it says, if one declares a gift of 100 zuz, 100 zuz was one of the coins, to the poor, it should be given to the poor of the city in which he resides. He didn't declare, he didn't say who. He said, I want to give 100 people to the poor. So it's a question. You have to follow his wishes, but who to whom were his wishes directed? So you assume the poor of the city. On this, Ramah says, to look above in 251.05, one who gives a donation to the charities of the community chest no longer has any rights to them, nor do his heirs once they go to the community chest, and the community may use them for any purpose that is good in the eyes of God and man. This is stated here in the Ramah regarding an unspecified pledge. However, in a case where his intentions are known not to have been directly only towards the poor of that city, for example, in cases where it is unusual, where it is usual for the wealthy to bequeath large sums at the time of their death, and it is usual to divide that bequest among all the poor, then this practice is followed. Even if the pledge was unspecified, we follow the normal custom, and the heirs should divide the bequest among all the poor that are worthy in their eyes, even if they do not of their city. This also applies when the money is being held in the hands of a trustee. It should be given to the heirs, and they should be apprised that such was the nature of the pledge. So once it was on the hands of a trustee, but he was only there till he died. Now it goes directly to the heirs, assuming that the heirs. I think so. Um, um, what is this? Oh, this is a. Gotta take a bookmark out there. Um, yeah. So he, he the Ramah's making this extra comment, and he's adding to say that yeah, okay, you give it to the poor of the city, but there are cases I'm aware of, sort of, that where the normal intent would be to more than just the city, and if that was the case, then that's what you would follow. That's all he's saying. Um, and in the hands of a trustee, there could be a case where a guy had somebody looking after his money for him, and so he's really got signing authority. But if now he's dead, it automatically goes to the heirs, to the kids, and assuming that they're of adult age. So you give it to them, and they should be apprised, and then you should tell them that he left this desire that the money be given, and they'll look after it. Now he says, if one has obligated himself to charity through a self-imposed penalty, he should pay it to the poor of the city, and he cannot say he will pay it to the poor elsewhere. Furthermore, in other words, again, here's something he said. It's not quite sure. We're assuming that when he says it, this is what it meant to the poor of the city. And we're talking he's still alive. So we would advise him to give it to the poor in the city. Furthermore, and if he says, I want to give elsewhere, we would assume that something else came up after he said it. I think that's what's going on. Because we'll see in the next chapter that you have to keep what you say. And I'll speak more about this when we get to the next chapter. And so if he said something, even though it was a little unspecified, there's a general understanding this is what was meant, and so that's what should be kept. Furthermore, the treasurers of the community chest can make claim to it, for it is called money owing to creditors, because he made this declaration that he's giving it to the poor. However, if one has sanctified a large sum and appointed his heirs to disperse it as they see fit, even to the poor of another city, then it is called money not owing to creditors, and the treasurers cannot make claim to it, for they are fulfilling a dying wish. That is the heirs. This is so even though the poor travel about and steal from every place, it is still called money not owing to creditors, since they were permitted to disperse it to whomever they wished. I have to look and see if I translated that properly, because it was a little weird phrasing. In cases where there were two trustees and one has died, the community has no right to appoint a new one, but the remaining one can do as he pleases according to the wishes of the donor. So there were two trustees, one of them is not here, so it's left to the other guy. Okay. Even regarding charity from the city residents, no man can claim such donations except with permission of the treasurer or the leaders of the community. If one pledges a sum to charity and does not have the funds to make good, we make arrangements for payment as with any other debtor. So he's considered a debtor. He made a pledge, so it's like he owes the money. So my notes are, the case in this paragraph deals with someone who utters a last will on his deathbed and is now no longer with us to explain his intent. What do we do? When there are two synagogues, the Rabbi, another authority, explains that the funds should be divided equally and a time-sharing agreement should be reached with regard to the Torah scroll. Because he said it goes to the two places. Well, you can't split it. It's no good if you split it. So you have to arrange, a time here and time there. We do not give the full amount to each. In other words, we don't have to write a new Sefer Torah and give them each a Sefer Torah. He had one Sefer Torah and he's giving them all. So that concludes chapter 7. And I guess this was a lead-in to the next chapter, which I've got it prepared here, and I've reorganized it from my normal. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to concentrate on Rambam. I'm going to then read the Shulchan Aruch, but when he exactly, or pretty exactly, just copies the Rambam, I'm going to skip him. I've got it in small type and go to the notes. And then we'll see if the Gemara, if the Talmud is relevant, if it's going to enhance our understanding, then we'll do that. Maybe sometimes we'll skip it. So we'll be able to get a little further, and maybe even a better idea in this. But you let me know. I'm asking for feedback. See if it reads better like this. Let me know. So then we can go back to the first way. So here's charity one. So he starts out by saying charity funds fall under the classification of vows, that in and of themselves they constitute a vow. Therefore, one who declares, I accept upon myself the obligation to give a selah, that's a certain coin, to charity, or what's this doing here? I don't know. Or this selah is charity, he says this shell is charity, is obligated to give it to the poor immediately. So someone who declares, I accept by myself the obligation to give a selah, or he says this selah, he points to the coin and says it is charity. So he has to give it to the poor immediately. If he delays in doing so, he transgresses the commandment, do not delay, which we brought down in the beginning. This is a new one. Do not delay. This is a verse in Deuteronomy 23:22. For it is within his power to give it, and the poor are always nearby. When there are not any poor, then he must set it aside and leave it until he finds some needy person. So he has to put something aside. So if he specified a coin, so he'd put it aside. If he didn't, he would have to take out a coin and put it aside. But if he had made the condition at the time of the declaration that he would not give the coin until such time as he encounters a needy person, then he need not separate the coin for safekeeping. Similarly, if he had made the condition at the time he declared the vow or at the time he gave the charity that the collector should be permitted to exchange the coin or to smelt it to gold, then this is permitted, but otherwise not. So see that, in other words, the collectors are going to stand in for the poor. So the basic idea he's saying is, once you say I'm going to give it to charity, since the poor are always about, there's always a poor person around, so you have a duty to give it right away. Now, if you couldn't find one, or the easiest thing for you was to give it to the collectors, so now they're charged with the giving it out. And what if they decide it would be better if they smelted it down or exchanged it for something else? So then it depends if he had made the condition at the time, but if he said he wants this coin to go, then they should do that right away. Shulchan Aruch basically repeats what he says. So I'm just going to go to the notes and point out that M presents two cases. In the first case, the specific coin pledged must be set aside, while in the second case, this is not necessary, so that ultimately the donation may be made using a different coin. Right? See what he said? If he made a condition at the time of the collection that we not give the coin until such time as he encounters a needy person, then he doesn't have to separate the coin for safekeeping. Well, basically, we're saying that poor are always around. So if he's going to go looking for guys, so it's really the same thing. So why are you giving me two different scenarios? So that, no, so that's not what I'm referring to. So that's what I'm getting at. He's saying this is the same. If I said I'm going to give up like a certain amount, like $100, or this $100, so he has to give it to the poor immediately. If he delays, if he doesn't give it to the poor immediately, so he's going to be in violation of do not delay, which we'll see is that talks about vows, because the poor are always there, so he could have done it right away. So he can't say, oh, I couldn't help it. So he's going to be in violation. Go give it. Now, in case where there's not any poor, then what he has to do is set it aside and leave it until he finds some needy person. That's case one. But case two is he made a condition that he would not give it until he finds the guy, right? So it's really the same thing. This last sentence is the guy's not there, so we're telling him to set it aside until you find somebody. And in the second case, since he made a declaration that he'll do it when he finds somebody, so now he doesn't have to set it aside. So I'm asking, what's the difference? Why? Because in the second case, it turns out he can give a different coin. He doesn't have to separate the coin for safekeeping. So now we're going to get it. This is a question of vows. You're going to see in a minute. This is not so much charity; it's vows. Vows are considered very significant, very what's the word? Strict. They're incumbent on you. Once you did the vow, you didn't have to make the vow, but once you made a vow, you have to keep your vows. It's like it's more than a promise. It's like an oath.
Bonding.
So again,
More bonding.
more godly. Yes,
Bonding.
bonding, like bonding, because you're in many cases you're saying like by God I'm going to give this to. That's the idea. And well, but you don't want to be a liar. But this is even worse because you're binding yourself. It's this vow is it's a good word, binding. You're taking a binding statement. So, but he's differentiating between the first case where he said, I'm going to give it, or I'm going to give this. So that's immediately binding. And the second case where he said, when I find somebody, I'm going to give it. So that's not immediately binding. He can switch. He can give another coin. It doesn't have to be this coin. He can use this coin for something else. He doesn't have to set it aside. So that's what I'm trying to examine. So I'm asking, why wouldn't a different coin suffice in the first case? So he'll put it in. He'll give another one. We're not saying he won't be able to give. He's as soon as he finds somebody, he'll give it to him. Why does he have to have it that particular thing? So if we are speaking of a time when different coins did not necessarily have the same value, today a dollar is a dollar, but there was a time when some coins were not chipped, not marked. They were considered a little more valuable than the next one. So a second coin may be inferior to the first, and so we don't want to take that chance. Then no exchange should be permissible in the second case either, because you said when I find somebody, I'm going to give this coin, so put it aside. So the answer may be supplied by the Talmudic passage in Rosh Hashanah, which will be coming up in the bottom, which expounds on the urgency necessary in matters of charity. It says over there, since the poor are always waiting, any coin dedicated to them must be given as soon as possible. And from this, it seems that the donor should actively seek out a poor person with whom he can consummate the gift. If no per person is to be found, then the coin must be set aside so that it is still ready to give at the first opportunity. Similarly, the treasurers of the charity fund are also enjoined to have the coin ready to give at the earliest opportunity. However, when the gift was made conditional upon a certain occasion, such as encountering a poor person, as stated in the second case, then it is as if no donation has been pledged until the occasion arises. So even though he said, I'm going to do this, it's like a pledge, it's like a binding, but he made it contingent on something happening, namely when I find somebody. So now it's like the pledge hasn't taken hold yet. Before that time, there's nothing forcing urgency upon us. So when I find somebody, I'll give it. So it hasn't happened yet. And therefore, the key coin need not be set aside in a state of readiness. I'm going to read the Talmud here. It's going to be a little repetitious, but also a little convoluted. But I want to give a sense of how serious the vows are, the binding statements. So in Rosh Hashanah, which is the tractate dealing with the head of the year, the New Year's, it's a holiday. We blow the shofar that day. Rabbi said, for paying charity offerings, one becomes liable at once. It's an offering. He's calling it an offering that somebody said he's offered to do it. What is the reason? Because the poor are waiting. Sure, this is obvious, says the Talmud. Not so, since you might think that as charity is mentioned in the passage dealing with offerings, it need not be paid till 3 festivals have passed or lapsed, as in the case of offerings. We are therefore told that this is not so. Only the others, the offerings, were made by the All-Merciful dependent on the festivals. But this charity is not so because the poor are waiting. So we have this idea that if I say I'm going to bring an offering to God, it's my choice. It's voluntary. So, okay, fine, nice. So you have, since you made a binding statement, so you can't go on forever. You have to bring it. But we're going to give you 3 occasions on which you can take advantage and do it. Because these 3 festivals were 3 times in the year that all the Jews, at least all the men, were obligated to go to Jerusalem and offer sacrifices there, appear in Jerusalem. It was like an ingathering of the entire people. It's a really phenomenal concept. And may not have been so easy and may not have been kept that well. But that's what it says in the Torah. Everybody should go up. So so he has these three festivals. Maybe one time he was sick, he couldn't travel, or maybe the weather was terrible, whatever. So you get three festivals. But if three festivals go by and you haven't um, brought the offering, then you're in violation of that verse that he brought down before. Do not delay, because you did delay. That's what it means. So do not delay. Do not wait, procrastination or whatever. Do not wait past three festival offerings. Now, since charity is mentioned in the middle of talking about offerings, so you might think it has the same details, and that if you make an offering to give charity, then you have till three festivals to do it, and you don't have to do it right away. So that's why they're coming to tell you, no, no, because in one case you're making an offering Almighty, he'll wait. But the poor, they're waiting and they're dependent. They're looking for you. So don't let them do it right away. That's that Gemara, that Talmud. Now, I especially wanted to read this aloud because this is Arachin. And Arachin, I'm going to explain what it is. And we just finished reading about it. There's one passage right at the end of Leviticus, Vayikra, that we just finished reading on our weekly readings in the Torah. And it's a very strange topic. There's a few things in there. But a guy takes a declaration. He says, I want to pledge the value of that person. And it's not what I think the value is. It's like the Torah dictates a value, and it's an arbitrary amount. So it depends on the guy's age. So if he points to a guy and says, I want to give his value to the temple. So if the guy's of a certain age, you give 50 shekels. If he's younger, you may give 30. Maybe younger, you give 10. And then if it's a female, you give different amounts again. If he's older, you give different amounts again. So it's all age dependent, and it had nothing to do with how rich the guy was, how talented he was, how successful, or how valuable he might be as an employee. Nothing. Just this is the age, and so that's what you give. And so that's called arachin. Arachin means like an estimation. So there's a whole tractate dealing with this. So in this tractate, it's talking about charity. It was taught in accord with Rabbi. Vows are like charity, but consecrations to the sanctuary are not like charity. What does that mean? Neither vows nor dedications are charity. So what are you talking about? Is it not rather that this is meant? Charity is like vows in respect of the prohibition, thou shalt not delay it, but is not like a consecration to the sanctuary, because anything so consecrated one must not use, whereas money dedicated to charity one may meantime use for oneself. Is that what you mean? This is the discussion. So Rabbi Kahana said, well, I reported this teaching before Rabbi Zvid of Nerdeya, whereupon he said, this is how you stated it, what you just said. We, however, state it thus. Rabbi Nachman, in the name of Rabbi Bua, based on Rab, said, if one said, this seller is dedicated to charity, he may exchange it both for himself or for someone else, independent of whether he had said, I take it upon myself in general, or I take it upon myself to pay this seller. So he said this seller, but he can exchange it. Makes no difference. So on that, there was, so the Shulchan Aruch already went through it, which said the same thing. So this is an example of where they were considering that because people will pledge something to charity, so it's like you're pledging it to the temple, to the communal use, to the holiest use. And so they had to differentiate between this case and that case. So, and at the end of the day, Rambam is saying that it depends if you just said it outright, whether you said this seller or this amount, you have to give it right away. Whereas if you made a condition, when I find the guy, I'll do it, then you have more leeway. Okay, so now we're going to go to paragraph 2. One who abbreviates himself regarding charity is obliged just as he is with all other forms of vows. So what does the abbreviate mean? For example, one who says, let this seller be the same as that one. that's an abbreviation because I don't know what do you mean that one? What's that? So he makes the second one charity, assuming that the first one is already named the charity. But just by saying, let this be the same as that, because you know what that is, so the second one becomes like the first. One who sets aside a selah and declares it a charitable donation, and then takes a second selah and declares, and this, makes the second selah a charitable donation too, even though he never separated it. And remember that we said that once you said this selah, so you have to give it right away. So when he says something just even not so clear as I want to give this selah to charity, but he just says let this selah be like that one, and this, either way, all these are considered a binding vow because we have the same rules with the vows to the temple. Now, Shulchan Aruch introduced some new stuff here, so I haven't made him small. I've kept him large. I read through him, but some of it's going to be repetitive. So he says, one who abbreviates himself regarding charity is just as one who abbreviates himself regarding a vow. For example, if there was a selah belonging to charity before him, and he says regarding another selah, let this be the same as that one, the second one becomes charity. I think he said it a little clearer than Rambam. As far as that, it's a little more brief. But the Ramah adds, a person should not say, this selah belongs to Hektish. Hektish was the sanctuary, but only to tzedakah, charity, because today you can't give to the sanctuary anymore. We don't have it. We haven't had it in thousands of years. So don't say that. Nevertheless, if he declared it Hektish to the sanctuary, his normal intention was toward charity for the poor. However, if he states that his intention was specifically to Hektish, to the sanctuary, then there's no remedy to derive benefit therefrom, and he must plead to a sage to absolve him through regret, as with any vow. So this would be, is he referencing to a whole set of rules with regard to any binding statement, any vow that you make. You could, no matter what you said, I'm going to do this, whether it was contingent or something or not, and then you just signed out that that's much more difficult than I thought, or I don't have the money anymore, it's going to be too expensive, or whatever. Something came up that makes you regret what you said. So you can't just say, well, too bad, I can't do it. You have to go to a sage or to a court, and they have to hear your case and then absolve it, because it's like you gave testimony about yourself, and it needs a court to undo that thing, and you have to satisfy certain conditions. So exactly. Now he's saying, so when he says, he's telling us, it's sort of like he's ruling as a big authority that a guy that normally says Hektish, even though it means the sanctuary, I'm telling you right away, doesn't mean that you can give it to charity. That's what he meant. But if a guy flat out said, no, that's what I meant, so then you're going to have to come to him or some other authority and now take it back if you're going to do anything. Otherwise, you're going to be up the creek because you dug a hole for yourself. Okay, I think I'm going to stop now. We're going to put a 9:30 here. Or ZD rather, ZD. I got another case where I put 9:30. And we'll come back to this and dive in a little better. And I'll let this sit with you for a while and think about it. And maybe tomorrow, either before or after, you can tell me if you find this as better or just as good or worse in the order from what we were doing before. How's that?
No, I think it's fine as long as we're getting the point right. Sometimes, though, the second repetition, even though it may seem repetitious, it clarifies. I mean, some of this material is pretty new to a bunch of us, but I think we can take from this that definitely what you say is important, and if you make a vow, especially to give, there's nothing more disappointing or defeating in this world is when people have hopes and expectations, and you just don't take away hopes from people. It's just not. Sometimes that's all they have, and when you're dealing with poverty, hope is sometimes very, very hard to come by, and yeah, it needs to be need to be met. And I think the world would be a better place if people understood and were more giving, for sure. And yeah, too often, like I said at the beginning, I mean, takers, you need to know your limits if you're a giver, because takers don't, and they just keep on taking. So
I want to raise their hopes too much. So you got, it's like this, it's a complicated thing. Yeah, well said, well said. So
right on, right on. Well, Rabbi, that was beautiful, and I think I'm getting lots out of this these sessions. And Robbie, Ronald, you guys got any questions for the Rabbi before we shut it down for the night?
No, everything's fine there, thanks. It's just very complex, isn't it?
Well, it's covering the bases is what it is, and it's like I was pretty shocked to see the liken to a vow and consecration. I mean, what you say is who you are. Your actions matter in this world, and
I'm going to start tomorrow with an insight on that very subject. Yeah.
Right on. So what's Robbie writing here? He's good. Robbie's good. So Robbie, always good to have you and Ronald with us. It means a lot that you guys keep coming back. And thank you, everybody, for listening in on Noahide World Center social media. Always a joy. So, Rabbi, we're done for tonight?
We're done for tonight.
All right, folks. So we will be back tomorrow night, same time, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, for our Zoom Daily with Rabbi Shlomo Schwartz, to a realistic map of meaning. Hope you're enjoying the material. If you got any comments, feel free to write them in the chat. And if you have any questions, or if you want to partake in the Zoom meeting, you can email Rabbi Schwartz at sbs447@gmail.com. That's Sam Bob Sam, sbs447@gmail.com, and he will reply to your email, and we'll go from there. So till tomorrow night, have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.